Victoria meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, Liz Truss launches her comeback with an explosive new article in the Daily Telegraph. And I share her view that Britain needs to end a culture of tax and spend. The country needs a dose of tough economic love. In my Take at 10, finally a Prime Minister who's serious about stopping the boats. Rishi Sunak showing surprise courage by threatening to axe the hated European Court of Human Rights. My Mark Meets guest is former Cabinet Minister Robert Buckland, plus tomorrow's papers and my all-star panel. We're live at 9.
Welcome back. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Fresh images of Nicola Bulley on the day she disappeared have been released by one of her friends. The CCTV images from a doorbell show the 45-year-old wearing a long dark coat, loading her car outside her home before driving her children to school and going for a riverside walk. Lancashire Police believe she fell into the River Wire, but a forensic search and rescue specialist, Peter Folding, says many elements of that theory don't add up.
Nicola was last seen in the top field by the witness. You know, there's nothing to say she couldn't have been kidnapped and dragged and put in a car and taken away, and someone could have put a mobile phone by the river as a decoy, or Nicola wanted to disappear herself. It just doesn't ring right. The amount of searches that's gone on in this river, the body, if there was a body in there, is no way going to go all the way down to the sea, not with us that current.
The Metropolitan Police has again apologised to the victims of the serial rapist David Carrick ahead of his sentencing hearing tomorrow. The sacked police constables admitted 49 criminal charges, including 24 counts of rape against 12 women. The force says they're truly sorry for the harm and devastation Carrick caused to the victims, saying he should never have been a police officer. The Met also says they're determined to address issues in the force.
In the week since he pleaded guilty, we have spoken about our genuine and urgent commitment to address the systemic failings that have been identified by our own reviews, by those of His Majesty's Inspectorate and Baroness Casey. We are determined to root out those who corrupt our integrity, and that work is already underway.
The UK's biggest nurses' union has offered to call off next week's planned strikes in England if the Prime Minister makes a new meaningful pay offer. The RCN's appeal to Rishi Sunak to match offers made by the Welsh and Scottish governments, both of which have led to strikes being suspended. Nurses and ambulance staff are combining tomorrow, widely predicted to be the biggest day of strike action in the history of the NHS, before further strikes later in the week. Ukraine says it's expecting a possible major new offensive from Russia this month as the anniversary of the invasion approaches. The Defence Minister, Alexei Reznikov, says Ukraine will be able to hold off Moscow's forces despite not receiving all of the West's military reinforcements. However, Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba says Ukraine will receive up to 140 battle tanks on Tuesday in what he's described as a first wave of reinforcements being supplied by a Western coalition of 12 countries. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. But now it is time for Free Speech Nation.
Nicola Sturgeon's popularity plummets to an all-time low. Rishi Sunak talks tough with the EU, and the US shoots down a Chinese balloon. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics. And, of course, we're going to try to update you on all the people and institutions cancelled this week by those lovable social justice activists, although we do only have 2 hours. Coming up on the show tonight, shot putter Amelia Strickler tells us why she could be left at a disadvantage by plans to allow transgender women to compete in female track and field events. We will hear about a Big Brother Watch investigation which reveals that government disinformation units have been spying on political dissent and suppressing free speech online. And I'm going to be speaking to the mother who is suing her son's school because she believes he was forced to take part in an LGBT pride parade. And, of course, I got my lovely studio guests this evening, comedians Josh Howie and Lewis Schaefer. Welcome, both. Now, I have a terrible throat and illness, but I've still come along, you know, and you're the health expert, Lewis. Maybe you could diagnose me, tell me what's going on here.
Well, you came along. You shouldn't be here.
I shouldn't be here. I should be eating more like you, which is just 20 eggs every morning and 3 full dead cows.
They are dead. They were alive at one time.
They were.
And I killed them. No, the key thing, this is the thing that I want to tell people. If you have a cold, do not cough. Coughing actually breaks the cells or whatever, does something in there, and it creates irritation. It makes things worse.
Josh, should we trust Lewis as a medical practitioner?
No, it's not a cold. You're obviously going through puberty.
Yeah. Well, long time coming, and I'm glad I got there eventually. We're going to start with some questions from our lovely audience. Our first one is from John. Where is John? Hello, John.
Hello, hi. Is it all over for Nicola Sturgeon?
Yeah, it feels like it, doesn't it? So apparently Nicola Sturgeon's approval rating has crashed from +50 at the height of COVID, and it's gone down to -4, right? So this follows, of course, all of these transgender rows, which has completely engulfed the SNP. They tried to put through their gender recognition reform bill. That was rejected by the UK government. And then, of course, there was the case of Isla Bryson, who is a male rapist, Adam Graham, who then decided to identify as a woman, and Nicola Sturgeon was remanding him in a female prison and then talking about whether he should be moved completely to a female prison. And this has kind of exposed the problem, hasn't it, Josh, with gender ideology within the SNP, or more broadly?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the subtitle of that trans book, you know, when ideology meets reality. And that's what's happened over the last week or so. And there was that amazing interview where Nicola Sturgeon just couldn't answer what is a woman. I mean, it was amazing. She was just totally flabbergasted. And it was fantastic.
Well, I think that's what's happened. Like today, for instance, we've had the Let Women Speak event in Glasgow. And this is in, I think it's in George Square in Glasgow. There's been all these people gathering. We might have some footage of that coming up if we can get hold of that. But it's been very interesting because we've seen all of these feminists. I mean, they're out there today, but they've been warning about this for many, many months, for a long, long time now. Nicola Sturgeon actually said, well, their arguments have no merit. That was the phrase she used. And now, of course, she's had to accept that actually there's a reason why prisons are segregated by biological sex. And it's not something that is particularly difficult to come to terms with. It's very strange, isn't it, Lewis, that she misread the room on this one, didn't she?
No, she has to go in that direction. Like we've been discussing for months and weeks, there's that silo mentality, as it was called on this show,
yes,
where you're in one silo or you're not. There's as I would say, there's no Venn diagram.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the middle. So she has to go with it, and eventually.
But interestingly, I think it's really scuppered her hopes of an independent Scotland, because of course the SNP and her entire domain has been to achieve that, and now her popularity, as we've just said, is down to -4. It doesn't look good for her, does it? She's going to have to go.
No, it never. You know what? That's the thing about politics. Why Lewis Schaefer will never be in politics, because it always ends ugly.
Is that the reason?
It always ends ugly. Yeah.
Is it because you refer to yourself in the third person?
Yeah.
Well, no, I meant Lewis Schaefer as the performer artist.
The brand.
The comedian known as Lewis Schaefer.
Can I just...
Yes, go on, Josh.
No, I'll just say the thing is, there's a lesson here for other politicians within the UK, because whilst her popularity has gone down in the SNP, Labour, interestingly, which is doing very well everywhere else, actually only went up, I think, 1 point, whereas the Tories in Scotland, who are the only ones who are actually opposing this bill, they went up 5 points. So this is a massive lesson for these other politicians, and I'm talking to UK Labour, to get on top of this, because they're still not ahead of the curve. Like, even this week, you saw them being interviewed, and they finally came out, and they'd obviously been briefed, and they were coming and go, no, obviously it's bad for rapists to be in prison. Like, well done. Like, I'm telling you the truth. It was like, no, you're still not saying trans women aren't women. Trans women are trans women, need to be dealt with respect, fairness and equality, but that does not make them women. And they're still not there yet.
I don't think Josh understands. There is no hope for this question because it's based on a falsehood. There is
hope because self-interest will always win out at the end of the day.
Also, Lewis, I mean, the thing is, I mean, as Josh says, the problem is that I don't think Labour fully understood how unpopular it is to deny reality with the electorate.
Yeah.
Right? And I know that politicians can get away with lying, but they can't get away with lying about something even a child knows to be true. And like when Keir Starmer is asked what is a woman, he's like, oh, well, you know, it's complicated. Yeah. Or can a woman have a penis? Oh, well, you know, it's difficult. Just say, no, a woman can't have a penis. No, there are differences. Like the other day when Rishi Sunak was interviewed, what is a woman? He said, adult human female. Done. It's over. It's fine. So that's what, if Labour, and I know you're a big Labour fan, Josh, if they want to get in and actually...
Apart from this and the previous anti-Semitism. But apart from that,
apart from
massive fan.
The misogyny and anti-Semitism, you're OK with the part? Yeah, OK. It'll be very interesting to see what happens, but I do think Nicola Sturgeon, it's over for her. It's got to be, surely, at this point. Anyway, we shall see. I don't often get my political predictions right, to be fair. But we'll see what happens. We've got another question now from Catherine. Where is Catherine?
Right here.
Hi, Catherine.
Is Rishi Sunak starting a trade war with the EU?
Yeah, so obviously you will have read about this. Rishi Sunak is talking about how he wants to scrap thousands of EU laws. He also wants us out of the ECHR, European Court of Human Rights. And the EU is sort of responding by basically saying, well, it's going to kick off a trade war, and it's going to basically punish Sunak and the UK. Now, Josh, I know you're not a fan of Brexit, but one of the points of Brexit, in fact, the main reason why people voted for Brexit, was a principle that laws that govern this country should be made in this country. And there are thousands of laws and regulations that do come from unelected bureaucrats in Brussels. That surely, as a Democrat, should disturb you.
Yeah, but there are two things here. Number one is, when we signed the deal, we made an understanding that there would be an even footing here, i.e. we wouldn't suddenly just cut all the legislation that accounts for workers or for the quality of our goods and whatnot, because then suddenly that makes it unfair in terms of having this trade with them if suddenly our quality of our goods isn't at the same standard as theirs. So that's one issue, and they're right to be... That's a fair enough issue. The other thing is, yes, of course we have the right now to get rid of some of these laws, but at the same time, the bill that's actually been pushed through to do it, there's a lot of problems with it because it basically gives ministers just carte blanche to cut whatever they want, which is not how laws are dealt with normally.
No, but we need to have sort of debates in Parliament. We need to have...
But this debate doesn't... That's what I'm saying. This law just goes, you can do whatever you want now, and that's a problem for our democracy.
But would you agree that on principle it's not a good idea to have laws formulated elsewhere?
I agree with everything on principle.
Lewis, are you concerned about this? I mean, you know, it's over for Sunak, it's over for the Conservatives. They won't be in next time. But, you know, do you think it's probably the right thing to do, given that they pledged to get Brexit done, to sort of actually push through this kind of thing?
Well, maybe Sturgeon and Sunak should switch positions, and they'd be maybe more appreciated in the country.
That would be interesting.
If they're in.
It's transition from I don't know, Sunak to Sturgeon.
Don't go along with me. That was ridiculous. I got no response from the people. They're not. It's the problem is you can only have one master. Are we our own masters, or are we the masters of Europe? We signed up for Europe because we were desperate. The English, the British signed up for Europe because the British were desperate to be part of those people.
Yeah.
And now, when we realize that it's messing us up in a lot of ways, that maybe we should separate. But if we separate... So we're basically, it's the same thing, the silo thing. There's no Venn diagram. You're either with us or against us.
I mean, how does the EU react to other countries who have, you know, they have slightly different regulations when it comes to trade and that kind of thing? I mean, surely they get around it that way. You know, they shouldn't have a problem with this, so long as the policies are formulated fairly. I would have thought.
Well, I guess that's the question of what is fair. They're basically shooting a warning shot across the bow to say, just be careful.
But don't you think sometimes that the EU, and particularly Macron, has been particularly truculent when it comes to the UK?
Absolutely.
Wanting to effectively punish the UK to set an example for other countries who might be thinking of leaving, i.e. Italy?
I think that historically that's certainly been the case, but I think that as these other countries have seen how disastrous it's been for us, I don't think that concerns theirs anymore.
Well, I don't think we'll know if it's been disastrous for another 10, 15 years. I think
we pretty much know.
Well, we know because we're in the midst of a global economic crisis, so...
Which is exasperated by Brexit, and now that we're the lowest of the G7 G7s, including Russia.
And I understand why you want to blame it on Brexit. It's nice and easy.
No, I don't want to blame it.
You don't have to think about it too much.
No, I do think a lot about it.
But it's
I cry every night.
It's not provable, though, Josh. This is the point.
It's provable, yeah.
Go on, then.
I just proved it.
Josh, there. You think assertion is the same as proof?
I think this would have happened anyway. I think we're in a worldwide crisis, and we exacerbated it because we were independent. So it wasn't because of Brexit, though it was in part because of Brexit, that we basically used COVID as a sort of smokescreen to get us out.
I mean, my illness today could be because of Brexit. There's a good habit of blaming everything on Brexit.
It's going to move away from you.
OK, there we go. We've got another question now. This one is from Danny. Where is Danny?
I'm over here.
How are you, Danny?
I'm very well, thank you. A little bit better than you, it seems.
Yeah, I'm on death's door. Let's hear your question.
OK, here we go. Should we be more concerned about China spying on the West?
Yeah, I mean, I find it quite funny, the big Chinese balloon which got shot down off the coast of America. And, this was a surveillance balloon. I didn't know such things existed. But the Chinese government said the craft was just a weather ship which had been blown off course. Did they overreact to shoot down the balloon, John?
No, I think that's totally fair enough. It's their airspace. At the same time, the idea that it seems like a very simple thing, that's just this big balloon, whereas actually China are pretty much spying on us right through our microphone. Hello, China. Hello, Beijing.
Yeah. What about TikTok? I mean, you do all those dances on TikTok, and the Chinese government, they're very good. You're very, you move in a lovely way.
Yeah.
But are the Chinese government using that?
Yes. I know.
Isn't this just, there is a troubling aspect to this, which is this escalation of tensions between China and the US. It is a bit of a worry, right?
It was, because they were going to have this big meeting. It was going to be the most high-profile meeting they'd had for quite a few years, hopefully reset some stuff, and now that's been called off. So, yeah, it is a problem.
Lewis, are you worried about China?
Talk about silos again.
Well, it is a silo. Is that of course we're worried about China because we've been basically sticking our nose into China's face since
it's our fault.
It is our fault.
Yeah,
of course it is.
Yeah.
Why should we be involved in Taiwan and the fact that Chiang Kai-shek went there in 1947, whatever it is? It's that
because we pledged to support Taiwan. The US,
Why?
sorry, has pledged to support Taiwan.
So how many times have you been in a situation where you pledge to support something, and then you realize the person you're supporting is a total nincompoop, and you're basically going to get your face punched in because you want to seem like the brave guy. America has stuck its nose, and when I say America, I mean America and its little buddy Britain.
The UK.
The UK. Is that we have stuck our... I'm not blaming you. You're coming along for the ride because you just got nothing. But they've stuck our nose around the world. We're in 120 countries or something. And eventually...
Lewis, should we not be concerned with human rights abuses and that kind of thing in China? Should we not stick our nose in when it comes to things like that? The Uyghur Muslims, for instance? No?
Yeah, maybe we should. Maybe we shouldn't trade with them. But if we're going to, we should care. But there's you can't mess with the biggest bear in your yard. You can maybe pick at your pussycat if he's giving you a hard time, but he's the biggest bear.
China, the biggest bear.
It's a very famous American saying.
Yeah, don't pick on the big bear.
Big bear in your
Go
yard.
with the small cat.
Yeah.
Is that the phrase?
I made that up.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, OK.
The way you said it just sounded like folklore, you know?
And then they blew up the balloon. Where did they blow the balloon off? 6 miles off of the coast of America. They waited for the balloon to go across Alaska, across Canada, across America. I mean, America's just asking for it. Once upon a time, we could stick our nose everywhere, but we can't do it anymore, Andrew.
Okay. No, you can't.
Yeah,
No, stay in your lane.
Yeah, stay in our lane. And you know what? At some point, like Britain realized, hey, we can't mess with every single country. The Suez crisis.
Yes.
That taught you British a lesson. You can't do what you used to do.
No. Okay. Well, I'm glad we got Suez
and America, and I'm on this.
You're on the pulse, Lewis.
Sorry.
1950s politics there. We're going to move on to a final question. This is from Peter. Where is Peter? Hi, Peter.
Yes, hi there. Now, were they wrong to write off Liz Truss?
Yeah, this was it. I actually read this article that Liz Truss has written for The Telegraph. And this is a big piece, 4,000-word piece. It's an essay sort of justifying her, what she did in her 44 days in office, and she defends her economic policies, her mini-budget. She says that her demise was caused by left-wing economic establishment. And she's also implicitly criticised Rishi Sunak there and his corporation tax increase. What do you think of it, Josh? I mean, You know, actually, she comes across pretty well in this article, better than she came across when she was a Prime Minister, I think.
Well, it took about, how long was she a Prime Minister?
44 days.
Yeah, so it took about 44 days for me to read this essay that she wrote. It is long, it's a beast. And in terms of writing her off, I don't think she was ever really written on.
No.
It's weird. You probably knew more about her from that essay than we ever did in the months of her
wasn't that the
election
problem? She wasn't able to sell the mini budget. People didn't understand what the mini budget was for. Yeah. She kept using phrases like economic growth, but actually when it came to the nuts and bolts of it, people didn't really understand, and it spooked the markets. Yeah. But wasn't there something quite aspirational and interesting about this idea of pushing for economic growth as a means to solve the catastrophe?
But it obviously failed, and it was disastrous, and our country did lose billions of pounds because of it.
Well, there is that, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the other side that she doesn't necessarily fully address. And I couldn't find, in that article, I couldn't find this left-wing economic establishment. I didn't see her use that phrase exactly.
I think that's the chat that's gone around it. People sort of talking about how she's blaming... She thinks ultimately that the government is pursuing a course which is effectively a form of left-wing economic policy, you know. Well, that's her view.
All I've seen is...
She thinks... Well, cutting corporation tax specifically.
But, I mean, all I've seen is these ex-leaders basically blame everybody else.
Right.
Corbyn blaming everybody else, Johnson, now her. It's like, look, just own up to... You made some mistakes.
I mean, her policies were conservative in a way that we hadn't really seen from a Conservative leader, and that was quite interesting. So maybe it's just not possible for the Conservative government or Conservative Party to be Conservative and still succeed anymore.
I think you're probably right. I think that the fact is that economic orthodoxy now is pretty much set, and there isn't going to be much differential between those two parties.
Do you feel sorry for Liz Truss, Lewis?
No, because I think she was an idiot. because I think personally, from my point of view, what she did was sort of the right move, but not at the right time. We've just blown the bank. And now you're cutting taxes, and now you can't do it. We've got to deal with the situation we have, which her government, not her government, but I mean the Tories, which basically what they did, they basically destroyed the country by spending money on a fake pandemic.
Well, it wasn't a fake pandemic, Lewis. There was an actual pandemic. I've had the disease 3 times.
I've had it too. I've had the flu. They don't go, oh my God, we're going to close the world because of the flu.
Andrew's got it right now.
Yeah.
I might have it right now.
I don't see anybody afraid. I'm going to come over and give him a kiss.
No, you're not. That absolutely does terrify me, but not for reasons of infection.
I'm willing to die, to be close to him.
Lewis, we've had this conversation, and I didn't want to have it again on air, but it's not going to work with us.
I know. We're supposed to pretend that I don't like you.
No,
we're supposed to pretend. It's not working
try and
out.
pretend.
No, yeah, I think I don't feel sorry for her. I do think that she was basically right, and this is the problem with this country right now, is that because of the BBC, because of the way the political system is worked, it hasn't gotten into the camps that it needs to get into, the two camps of the Conservative Party, which is the camp that's running it now is basically Keir Starmer.
That's sort of going back to the point we were making earlier, that there isn't much between them.
I feel like there are two silos. and there's a Venn diagram.
We've had enough silo and Venn diagram chat to last us all night, so we'll leave it there. No, Lewis.
This country,
Lewis, I'm going to a break, whether you like it or not. But after the break on Free Speech Nation, shot putter Amelia Strickler will tell us why herself and many other athletes are concerned about proposals to allow transgender women to compete in female track and field events. See you in a moment.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Concerns are currently being raised by athletes about plans by governing body World Athletics which would allow transgender women to compete in female track and field events. A final decision is expected in March, with the governing body saying they will potentially continue using testosterone limits as their basis for inclusion. Other sports have banned transgender athletes from participating at the top level if they've gone through any part of the process of male puberty. So to discuss this issue, I'm joined by 2-time British champion shot putter, Amelia Strickler. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, thank you.
So let's start with your own experience. And obviously, as a top athlete, it's really important, isn't it, that you are competing against other women?
Yes, 100%. You know, the male shot putters that I've, trained with, been on the circuit with, it's just a different level than the women shot putters. So it would be a massive, massive disadvantage to us if any were to, decide one day they needed to change gender.
So when did you decide to speak out about this? I mean, there have been some athletes, people like Maria Yamauchi and Martina Navratilova, who have spoken out, Sharon Davis being another example, getting a lot of flack for doing so. So you must have been aware that there would be that possibility of a bit of pushback.
Yes, of course. I was asked to do an interview for Telegraph, and I too thought I would get so much hate for it online, and I actually got so much support. Really? So many parents, thank you from my daughters. I don't want my daughters to have to go through this, or people's personal experiences of I've had to compete in park runs against males who are now identifying as women, and I'm not getting the true results that I deserve, that I've worked for. Because even though it's a park run, surely that matters to some people. That's their competitive, that's their competitive sport. And I just think it would, it's just been such a nice response, to be honest.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thrilled about it.
And, a lot of people also interpret this kind of statement, saying that we want single-sex sports, as being transphobic or coming from a place of hate. What do you make of that accusation?
I mean, I think it's almost anger towards us, and I don't feel like I would discriminate against anyone. I mean, I throw a metal ball for my job. Who am I to tell people how to live? But I just think it's not about not including people. It's just about protecting the women's category and the female sex, so they can still be included. There's talks of an open category, for example. So. They would still be included, and it's not an exclusion. It's just protecting the women's category, so we're not seeing records, sponsors, winnings going, to biological males for women's events.
And my understanding is, the current system where it's about testosterone suppression that actually isn't necessarily sufficient, is it?
No, there's so many research articles. I think there's at least 17 to date that have basically said if they've gone through male puberty, the suppressors or keeping testosterone at a lower level is not going to undo those male advantages. You can't undo bone size and heart size and lung capacity and, hip angles, et cetera. There's so many examples where you just can't undo that, and they're just at such an advantage. And we see in sport, there's even some things on Twitter right now that are, Dina Asher-Smith, one of the best 100-meter runners in the world, would finish, 8th in the U17 boys category just in the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you argue with statistics like that? That's that would be devastating for women's sport if it got to that.
I've seen a lot of people, though, take issue with the statistics or just simply deny them. For instance, people saying, well, there aren't many trans athletes taking all the medals, that's not happening. What do you say when people say that?
It is happening, though. Laurel Hubbard from New Zealand took a woman's place at the Olympics.
Yeah.
I was denied the Olympics in 2021 simply because my governing body didn't want to take me.
Yeah.
I know how it feels to be denied an Olympics, so I know someone at home was sat at home during that Olympics that could have been there.
Yes.
So it is happening at elite level in swimming as well in the U.S. and in high school sports, which high school sports in the U.S. get you into great colleges and universities on scholarships, et cetera. So it is ultimately happening, and women are losing out right now.
And we've seen, as you mentioned, Laurel Hubbard, there was also the case of Leah Thomas, the swimmer, who went from, I think, roughly 592nd in the ranking to number 1 overnight. And of course, when that happens, it opens people's eyes, doesn't it? It's very prominent when you see someone on the podium towering over the competitors.
Yeah, I mean, of course. It certainly would be the reverse if I were to, decide one day, that I wanted to transition to a man. It just wouldn't work, in the reverse. And I just think, we've got so much, data and, there's more studies being done now. There's just such an advantage there. And that's a prime example of, retaining male advantage.
And how about younger athletes, girls who want to become professional athletes? There's a lot of pressure, isn't there, to not register an objection about this stuff?
Yes, I agree. A lot of parents have messaged me saying, my daughter has had to compete against a boy and she was absolutely devastated when she didn't, get the results she wanted, et cetera. And I just think it would, we could be missing out on the next, great British sports star if, you have, children's dreams devastated, to be honest, because they're not getting the results they wanted. They could leave the sport, et cetera. It all adds up and it's a ripple effect for everyone.
Do you think things are changing and moving in the right direction? I mean, those accusations that these kind of objections that you're raising are because of hate, bigotry and all of that kind of thing, they're just not washing anymore. Because people can see it's just not fair, and that is what it's really about.
Yeah, it's just about fairness. It's not about hate at all, honestly. We want them to be included, but fairly in an open category just to protect the female category.
And so this open category, the Athletics UK has said that that's what they want to go for, an open category. So there'll be a male category, female category, and an open category where anyone can participate irrespective of their sex. Do you think that could work on a practical basis?
Well, it would actually be a female category and an open category, no male category.
Okay.
So I think personally, I personally think that's a great solution. Right now, to compete, they'd have to suppress testosterone levels to certain levels. With an open category, I'm wondering if they would do away with that so they could keep their biological, testosterone levels normal, per se, for that individual. And I think that would be a great idea, to let them be included, but not, put women at a disadvantage.
Yes. And do you think with all these other developments that are happening in Scotland when it comes to the gender recognition bill and this kind of thing, that actually we're moving into a position where we can sort of talk about the necessity for recognising biological sex and how women's rights are always affected by this?
Yes, I would agree with that completely. I think we do need to protect women's rights and protect, women's privacy completely. I just think are the ones being put at a disadvantage in those instances.
Have you had any sort of flack about this which you've found uncomfortable?
Obviously, you do get a few people who, want to, name call, et cetera, on social media. But it really isn't about that. It really is just to keep, sport fair. And I've had so much, like 99% positive support, to be honest. It has been so amazing. Everyone that's reached out has been so kind. And, thank you for doing this. Thank you for my daughters and my nieces, like so many parents. It's just so sweet.
Well, this is, I suppose, the thing of having the majority view, but that only a minority are willing to express. I suppose that's where we're at.
Yes, it is a bit difficult.
But Amelia Strickler, really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And after the break on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be hearing about a Big Brother Watch investigation, which reveals that government disinformation units have been spying on political dissent and suppressing free speech online. See you in a couple of minutes. Thanks so much.
No, thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway...
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel, Josh Howie and Lewis Schaefer, to help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. Just email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk and we will do our best to answer your problems. The campaigning organisation Big Brother Watch has released a report called Ministry of Truth, which is about what they describe as secretive government units spying on your speech. So the report claims that Whitehall units monitor government critics online, including MPs, journalists and the public, on the pretext of combating what they describe as misinformation. So here to tell me more about this report, I'm pleased to welcome the Advocacy Manager for Big Brother Watch, Mark Johnson. Thanks for joining us, Mark. So you've got a copy of the report there, Ministry of Truth. Can you start by telling us how this came about? How did you find out this information and what did it reveal?
So the report is the culmination of months of investigation into a number of disinformation units in the government. And we'd heard snippets about these units over the last kind of year or two. We knew that they were operating, and we knew that they had a very close relationship with social media companies, which basically gives them a hotline to censor speech online. And we thought we really need to find out more about this. The government have been really, opaque about these units, really not letting on about what they're doing. So we did a big piece of work. It was months of research using open source information, data subject access requests as well, and freedom of information requests. And what we found really is that far from looking at disinformation, actually a lot of these units, including the counter-disinformation unit, which is probably the largest one, they were looking at criticism of government policy and actually monitoring dissent, particularly during the pandemic when they were most active.
Can you give us some examples of the kind of people they're monitoring?
Yep, absolutely. So we spoke to people across the political spectrum and we encouraged people to put in these subject access requests so we could find out what the units were looking at and whether they were looking at these people. And I'll give you, one very good example. The veteran Conservative MP, David Davis, he was put into a vaccine hesitancy report, a disinformation report, if you like, for criticising the government's vaccine passport policy. We also found out that Whitehall had basically encouraged the Department for Health to attack the Daily Mail for reporting on, COVID modelling and whether modelling was accurate. But actually, they went for a full kind of frontal attack on the Mail. So there was a kind of freedom of press angle there as well. So a lot of what we found, in fact, loads of what we found really was that they weren't looking at disinformation, certainly not in this case. They were really going above and beyond that. And they were monitoring dissent and criticism of government policy.
I even read that they recorded the journalist Peter Hitchens for sharing an article on the website Spiked, which I used to write for.
They said that Peter was trying to influence a vote in Parliament. I mean, heaven forbid anyone might try and influence a vote in a democracy, not least a journalist who was writing about it. But another, great example of somebody that was actually, critical of the government. In that case, he was asking questions, and for that, he was put in one of these disinformation reports.
So this is a unit which is designed in order to monitor this stuff. Then what do they do with the information that they gather?
Well, what's most worrying is that they do have this special relationship with the social media platforms, so, Twitter, Facebook and so on, and it allows them to have a kind of hotline to these platforms, and they basically pressure them to take down speech. So what we found is that, yes, they're not looking at disinformation, and that raises real questions about the kind of stuff that they might be forcing the censorship of online.
Do we know how much the government is fully aware of what's going on?
They're fully aware. Unfortunately, it does speak to the state of free speech in the UK at the moment. The government ministers have actually boasted about taking down inappropriate information online. That's a quote. Chris Philp used that to say, we're taking down inappropriate information.
Wow.
In Parliament, he boasted that. And yet they won't be forthcoming about the kind of information, and all that we know about these units is basically in this report. And as I said, it's really not disinformation from what we can see, it's criticism and dissent.
Because we've seen, obviously, with the Twitter files that have been released, the extent to which there's even been FBI involvement with Twitter, in which Democrats and Republicans have been contacting Twitter and saying, take down these tweets, please, and they've been complying.
Absolutely.
But we didn't think it was happening here.
And it is. And the government are boasting about it, but not being transparent about it, which is probably the very worst of all worlds. The relationship between government and big tech is converging. They wouldn't like you to think that, but it really is. And the fact that there is a hotline of this kind is worrying. It needs to be scrutinised fully. And in fact, we're calling for the CDU, the Counter-Disinformation Unit, to be shut down, to be investigated fully, and for some light to be shone on some of these practices.
Now, you've been calling for that, and you've obviously compiled this very detailed report. Have you had any feedback or response from the government?
So far, the government have the response has been quite muted. They haven't denied any of this at all. They've tried to suggest that because lots of the information was in the public domain, the mass monitoring and recording of information which was critical of them under the guise of disinformation, combating disinformation is legitimate. I mean, that's what they've said, but no denials at all. The response across the political spectrum has been good as well. We've had MPs saying they are concerned. Are they looking at me? When a Conservative member of Parliament is in one of these disinformation reports, who, by the way, had videos taken down from YouTube during the pandemic.
Yes, David Davis.
Yes, yeah. Who else could they be monitoring and recording?
I mean, is it just that they don't see this as a problem because this kind of thing has become normalised? I mean, you've got police in Scotland who have recorded hundreds of jokes that they've read online, not told the people that they're recording them, but they've recorded it nonetheless. And they could defend that by saying, yes, well, we're not taking action, we're simply recording what people have said.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it really speaks to the kind of where we're at in terms of the health of freedom of speech in the UK at the moment. It is worrying, and obviously all of this is under the shadow of an online safety bill which is coming, which still poses a major threat to freedom of speech in the UK too. So unfortunately, it's a right that's not doing particularly well, but that's why work like this is really important, to try and shine a light on basically censorious activities and a relationship that's very uncomfortably close between the government and the platforms, and one which is clearly being used to censor as well.
And people aren't talking that much about the online safety bill, but could you maybe talk us through why precisely you feel that it has some negative bearing on freedom of speech?
Yeah, well, I mean, basically what it does is it outsources, policing online to tech companies, and that includes policing our speech. And there was a long debate about legal but harmful speech, which we won some of that, which was really good.
I think they've taken that out of the
That's
bill,
right. They took out the legal but harmful to adults provision, so talking about speech which is entirely lawful but subjectively harmful, but there are still loads of problems with free speech in there, and still basically outsourcing the speech policing to the platforms, which is worrying.
Is it just that they don't understand where this can lead? I mean, I presume that you are concerned about a slippery slope, I suppose, but why can't a government, particularly a Conservative government, see that free speech needs to be upheld?
I think when you've been in government for as long as this government have, obviously you can be complacent, particularly when it comes to protecting civil liberties, if and when at some point in the future they do lose an election, I'm sure they'll come to really realise how important those civil liberties are when they're not sat on the throne.
And do you have any confidence that a Labour government would do better?
I will be very interested to see on the online safety bill. I've been quite disappointed so far with what we've heard from Labour, but we will just have to take it as it comes, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I rather nervously suspect that it's going to be bad either way. Anyway, Mark Johnson, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And after the break on Free Speech Nation, Fraser Myers will be here to tell us about the strange case of a classic Tom Jones hit being banned by the Welsh Rugby Union. We'll see you in just a couple of minutes.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. The Wales rugby team lost the opening match of their Six Nations campaign to Ireland yesterday, and choirs performing before at the match were ordered not to play the Tom Jones classic Delilah, which has long been considered an anthem of Welsh rugby. The Welsh Rugby Union made the decision on the basis that the lyrics of the song can be considered an endorsement of domestic violence. Critics of the band say it is patronising to think fans would take the lyrics so literally, while suggesting the union would do better to address allegations of a toxic culture which were aired in a BBC documentary last week. Spiked Deputy Editor Fraser Myers has written about this issue, and he joins me now. Fraser, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So, I, in preparation for this, read the lyrics of Delilah because I'm not that familiar with the song. And it does talk about a man who stabs his girlfriend to death because she cheats on him. So very violent imagery. So isn't that a reason enough to not have it in a public place?
Well, let's remember this is all imaginary. This is not even a description of a real act of violence, and it's certainly not encouraging people to go out and commit similar acts of violence. You know, it's a song, it's a kind of murder ballad. It's similar, some people have compared it to Carmen, the opera, where, spoiler alert, if you haven't, if you're not familiar, Carmen is stabbed because she says she's going to leave the main character for another man.
And I suppose similarly with songs like Mac the Knife and that kind of thing.
Exactly. I think generally, you know, until recently, people were trusted to listen to these kinds of lyrics and sing along to these kinds of lyrics without thinking that they were being incited to commit acts of domestic violence.
So is that the point? Is that the objection, that people feel that if you hear a song about violence, you will then go out and commit it? Is that the objection, or is it just that people think it's distasteful because there are families there and children there and that kind of thing?
I think there's a bit of both. So the Welsh Rugby Union said it's, you know, potentially offensive and things like that, but also, no, there is this view. Chris Bryant, the Labour MP, very explicitly linked the song to a rise in domestic violence. He says, you know, domestic violence spikes whenever there's a rugby match.
But not because of Tom Jones.
Well, you and I know that obviously Tom Jones is not the cause of this, but he's made that link explicit. There was also the head of Powys Police made a similar claim. He said, you know, a certain number of women are murdered each week in Wales, and that's why we've got to stop singing this song. I mean, you know, these are pretty extraordinary links to draw. No, I don't think anyone is hearing the lyrics to a Tom Jones song and being inspired to commit an act of violence.
Do you think it would be a stronger argument then to say, well, look, the song just isn't appropriate because of the nature of the... I mean, there are certain songs we wouldn't sing. We wouldn't sing songs with excessive sexual imagery. Wouldn't sing Justify My Love by Madonna at the rugby match, would you? Or something like that?
We also got to be a bit real here. I mean, it's like right at the end of the song. It's, you know, it's a handful of words at the end of the song. This is not the reason people are singing it. They're singing it because it's, you know, lends itself to being shouted out. It's really quite melodious, you know. It's,
and it's Tom Jones, I suppose.
It's Tom Jones, you know. And there are far more violent songs out there in the world. I don't know if you're a fan of drill music, of course, Andrew, but you know, you can hear songs every day about people being.
But that's the point, isn't it? That if there was a drill song at the rugby, they could say, well, look, let's not do that.
I think they shouldn't say, let's not do that. I couldn't see that catching on at the Welsh Rugby, to be fair. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, what this comes down to, and as with all acts of censorship, it's about distrusting the public.
Right.
It's about believing that, obviously, you know, an MP or a police officer could listen to Delilah and they could understand why it's wrong, whereas those thickos who go and watch a rugby game, who go and get drunk, or, you know, they can't be trusted to, you know, essentially differentiate fiction from reality.
And we've seen this a lot, haven't we, with songs such as Baby It's Cold Outside, which people have said is about sexual assault.
Encouraging people to commit sexual assault because, you know, the woman is persuaded. She keeps rebuffing his advances, saying, you know, I actually should go home, and he's saying it's cold outside.
Yes, and I think someone re-recorded the lyrics in a more progressive way.
Yeah, there was a kind of Kelly Clarkson and John Legend redid it, and they emphasised consent and the importance of choice. It's not as good, I promise you.
So it's a kind of literal-minded reading of what is, after all, an artistic piece of work, right? And similarly, we heard the debates about the Pogue song "Fairy Tale in New York," which happens every Christmas.
Every Christmas, someone tries to get that banned. You know, on the basis that it's homophobic or whatever, even though clearly that's not the intention.
So is it just that we have to sort of get back to this point that when an artist creates a work, like either a poem or a song or a film or a book, they're not necessarily endorsing what goes on within it?
You would hope that it's such a simple concept, and yet it evades, you know, even politicians and even, you know, top people in the police. Yeah, you have to just recognise that, you know, talking about a violent act or, you know, reproducing a violent act is not the same as endorsing it and not the same as encouraging it. But I think it's because, you know, we all agree that incitement to violence is a bad thing, and the enemies of free speech have cottoned on to this argument, so they say that anything that they don't like is an incitement to violence, an incitement to misogyny.
But why is that? I mean, you and I have discussed this before, but there has been 6 decades of research into media effects theories.
Yeah.
We know, as a matter of fact, that popular culture, artistic, entertainment, this kind of thing, doesn't have a trickle-down effect on public behaviour. That's been confirmed now, beyond all doubt. So why do we keep coming back to this faith-based position of the arts have the capacity to corrupt the great unwashed?
I think that, you know, this idea has always been around, and there are just different... I think what's changed is that there's always been kind of pearl clutchers, there's always been sort of Mary Whitehouse-type figures, but now it's more the kind of progressives who are making these kinds of arguments. You know, it used to be fundamentalist Christians, or not even fundamentalist Christians, but just, you know, strong Christians who objected to sex and violence on television. Now it's the kind of woke types who think they're standing up for minorities, they think they're standing up for women, but really they're patronising us all and talking down to everyone.
On the other hand, I've heard a lot of people saying that Sam Smith's video, the latest video, ought to be banned because it has sexualised imagery. But, of course, there have been sexualised imagery in pop music forever. Yeah, I mean, sex and pop go hand in hand. You know, people were disgusted by Elvis's, you know, shaking hips. And that seems ridiculously tame to us now. But back in the day, you know, people were talking about that corrupting the minds of young generations. Yes.
Now, there's, you know, Sam Smith's music video is interesting for a number of different reasons, partly because it's kind of he's attempting to express his authentic non-binary identity, and people, you know, can take issue with that. But you wouldn't want to ban it, would you?
Well, you wouldn't want to ban it. I don't think it's a very interesting or actually subversive video.
Ironically, it's actually very much in line with the kind of establishment. You know, it's in line with the view that we're all gender fluid, aren't we? Really.
Well, that's the point. So whereas those old videos by Prince and Madonna, they were very much pushing back against establishment ideas. His is just confirming it.
Totally.
Yeah. Fraser Myers, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it. That's it for the first hour of the programme, but plenty more to come after the break, when Josh Howie and Lewis Schaefer will be back to field more questions from our wonderful live studio audience. Do not go anywhere. See you in a moment.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app, and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, including more questions from the audience, a discussion about why a statue of four-time Prime Minister William Gladstone has been hidden from view by a church, and we will meet the mother who is suing her son's school because she says he was forced to attend a Pride event. But first, let's get the latest news from Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. A private underwater rescue company will join the search for Nicola Bulley as fresh images of the missing mother of two have been released. The specialist diving company SGI will assist police searching the River Wire after offering its services free of charge. Now, it comes hours after the first images of Nicola on the day she disappeared were released by her family. Lancashire Police believe she fell into the river. SGI's chief executive, Peter Faulding, says many elements of that theory don't add up.
Nicola was last seen in the top field by the witness. You know, there's nothing to say she couldn't have been kidnapped and dragged and put in a car and taken away, and someone could have put a mobile phone by the river as a decoy, or Nicola wanted to disappear herself. It just doesn't ring right. The amount of searches that's gone on in this river, the body, if there was a body in there, is no way going to go all the way down to the sea, not with us that current.
The Metropolitan Police have again apologised to the victims of the serial rapist David Carrick ahead of his sentencing hearing tomorrow. The sacked police constables admitted 49 criminal charges, including 24 counts of rape against 12 women. The force says they're truly sorry for the harm and devastation Carrick caused to the victims, saying he should never have been a police officer. The Met also says they're determined to address issues in the force.
In the week since he pleaded guilty, we have spoken about our genuine and urgent commitment to address the systemic failings that have been identified by our own reviews, by those of His Majesty's Inspectorate and Baroness Casey. We are determined to root out those who corrupt our integrity, and that work is already underway.
The UK's biggest nurses' union has offered to call off next week's planned strikes in England if the Prime Minister makes a new meaningful pay offer. The RCN's appeal to Rishi Sunak to match offers made by the Welsh and Scottish governments both of which have led to strikes being suspended. Nurses and ambulance staff are combining tomorrow, widely predicted to be the biggest day of strike action in the history of the NHS. Ukraine says it's expecting a possible major new offensive from Russia this month as the anniversary of the invasion approaches. Defence Minister Alexei Reznikov says Ukraine will be able to hold off Moscow's forces, despite not all of the West's military reinforcements arriving in time. However, the country's foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, says Ukraine will receive up to 140 battle tanks on Tuesday in what he's described as the first wave of reinforcements being supplied by a Western coalition of 12 countries. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now, back to Free Speech Nation.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Let's get some more questions from the lovely audience. And our first question is from Paka. Hello.
Hi, Andrew. Has the success of ChatGPT been built on underpaid labour?
Yeah, this is quite a scary story. It was in Time magazine, and you'll know of ChatGPT, which is one of these big technological advances which creates words and ideas by scouring various sources on the internet. This is a chatbot. It generates text on any topic that you like. It recently produced a test English essay which was given an A-star grade. That's how sort of good it can be. But this Time investigation has shown that the creator, the company that created OpenAI, used outsourced Kenyan labourers who were earning less than $2 an hour to try and make the site less toxic. And Josh, this is really a horrible story because these workers, for a start, they're being grotesquely underpaid for their work. But then the work they are asked to do is to effectively find examples of text which is either vile or illegal or depicts abuse or bestiality or sexual assault or violence, so that the chatbot can learn not to generate language like that. Yeah. So your job is effectively to sit there and find the worst possible examples of humanity. And this has resulted in a lot of trauma. They've had no support or very little support. I mean, what's going on here?
Yeah, so as you say, like the whole point of this AI is that it searches all the internet, and they need a way to sort of differentiate between like the bad stuff out there. And obviously there is a lot of bad stuff out there. Yeah. So these people, they would label this stuff, and some of it was like pretty weird. Like it was like Batman and Robin, and you had Robin being sexually abused by one of the villains or whatever. You're shaking. Is that like? Did you write that bit?
I'm saying
no.
Okay.
And but yeah, it is serious. And the company was being paid. This Kenyan company was being paid like $12.50 per hour, and then the workers are getting $2
okay,
an hour.
Usual story.
Usual stuff here. And but they ceased trading with them because then it moved on to images, and so these people were having to go through some of the worst images imaginable and label it as abuse or death or whatever it is. And they really were traumatized from it. And that's, of course, what you've got parts of the police who that's their job as well, but at least they get the counselling and the training to be able to mentally deal with it. These people are saying they're still scarred.
That is their job. They're going into that knowing that that's their job. They are remunerated appropriately. They're not getting $2 an hour. You know, this is the thing. So it's a different. It is an exploitative practice, clearly.
Absolutely, but then it's like everything that we do is exploitative.
Yeah,
it's the scale of it in terms of the 10th-fold sort of increase or decrease of the wages. But anything that we do, someone down the chain is getting. I don't want to say the word, but
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. What do you think about this, Lewis? I mean, ChatGPT. I mean, as a concept, are you happy with this concept that there are these computers now that will be able to generate novels and plays and literature and art? Does this probably can do stand-up comedy, make you redundant?
Yeah, well, it's actually I asked them to say why asked ChatGPT why they should go see my show on the 23rd of February. And they said some very nice things about Louis Schaefer.
Yeah.
So whatever they want to do to poor Kenyan people, you know.
As long as people come to your show, it's okay.
And as long as they say nice things. They didn't mention any of the horrible things that if you search the internet very closely, you might find.
Well, exactly. That's what surprises me about that.
Because that's what's going to happen. I mean, you guys are so ridiculous. And this whole story is like a total non-story. The fact is that every enterprise is built on theoretically underpaid workers.
Right, but that's not right, is it?
It is is right, because somebody wants to do something for nothing. Am I making as much money as you, Andrew?
Let's not go into that.
Is this enterprise being built on the backs of Louis Schaefer, people like me, providing the comedy? Am I being paid enough? That's the question. And if Twitter,
you should be paid as much as me. Absolutely.
I should be paid more, maybe. Who knows? Who knows? No, I think you're amazing.
So are you saying you want to get $2 an hour? You want to go up that far, do you?
I'd like to be paid something.
Just so everyone knows, Lewis is paid for his time here, and pretty well, I think.
I think, considering who I am,
considering the trouble you get me into, I think you should be.
Considering no one else wants me, I think that has to be taken into account. And in a way, you could say that. Listen to me. No, we should give all the money in the world, free money, like the nurses and the train drivers. Just throw out the money. But the fact is that these people in Kenya, lovely people, Kenyans, but they're willing to do it for £2 an hour or £1 an hour, whatever they are willing
Lewis,
to do it.
They're poor and they don't have a choice.
Yes, and maybe they're poor. Maybe if they don't want to take the money, they shouldn't be poor. Maybe they should work on that.
Oh, I mean, he's just a contrarian, isn't he?
I think he's just solved the world hunger.
Yeah.
Well, it is sort of like that. It's like, and a matter of fact, you're saying that they're being forced to look at horrible images, which is horrible, but they're told in advance, you're going to look at horrible images, and we're going to give you £70 more a month, which is
well, never let it be said that we don't have a breadth of opinion here on this show. But we're going to move on to a question from Steve. Where is Steve?
Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Steve.
So my question is it offensive to call the French the French?
Yes. Well, apparently the Associated Press, they were criticised this week. There was a tweet which Associated Press put out saying that articles should avoid using, quote, dehumanising labels, such as the French. Now, I think, by the way, this was completely derided by the French embassy in the States, who tweeted out saying they should now be known as the Embassy of Frenchness. And then AP later said that the use of the French in this tweet was inappropriate and caused unintended offence. But, look, for a start, it's the French, so who cares? But the other thing is, like, it was really about the use of the definite article, wasn't it? Because it's like in the way that you say the poor, right? Or the gays. Like, it's the that is the offensive part, isn't it?
Yeah, we should stop saying the.
Let's just get rid of the definite article.
You just said it, mate.
The definite article.
No, you just stop saying it.
Our definite article.
Yeah, they definite article.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, this is all a bit of an overreaction, isn't it?
It is, but it's funny because they obviously chose that example because they thought, well, that's the most offensive.
The least offensive.
Sorry, I can't say it. But yeah, they thought saying like the French, rather than say the gays or any other example that would get you into trouble.
Yes.
Which now someone's going to clip and get me into trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were going, don't say the French, and then everyone's like, no, you can't even say the French. So
it does. I mean, I think they were trying to avoid offence there, and they inadvertently. Who knew that the French were so sensitive?
Well, this is a surprise because the French are so much better than you people.
I love that we keep using the phrase the French. We haven't stopped.
But this is a very old problem that I recognized when I was in New York, and how you address people. I'm a Jew. Nobody wants to be called the Jew. Oh, here comes the Jew.
Don't cut to me.
Yeah. No, I have to, because that's your stock and trade. Every time we do these shows, you're trying to
I'm going to start calling you the Louis Schaefer.
Yeah, Louis Schaefer, the one and only. But the point is, and maybe Andrew has done something bad to the Jews. He's trying to make up for it by having the two Jewiest people. What did you do? What did you do?
I always have diverse panelists.
This is anti-diverse. Anyway, the point is, it's the same in America. This comes from, I think, an American thing.
Yeah.
Is that in America, when I'm on stage, when I speak to black people, I call them black people. When I speak to Jewish people, I call them Jewish people. When you call someone the blacks or the Jews
it
or the gay,
right?
It does. So in a way, they're right. The problem is, why this is so funny is that the French are so much head and shoulders better than us that it's like.
But also, I don't think it's the same as the gays, because actually, the French, we say the English, we say the Scottish, say the Welsh. I mean, I don't think it's ever been considered offensive before, has it?
No, I don't think so. But also, it's interesting because when we say something like the English, there's actually something weirdly positive there, depending on how you.
Yeah, it's the tone, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, for me, that doesn't bring up negative associations.
No.
That's like, there are the good things that we're at, like queuing and the English breakfast or whatever it is.
That's all we got.
It doesn't have to be a negative thing. I mean, if you're like, the French...
Yeah, and if you spit as you say it, that's what...
like they do.
Well, yeah. They have no manners, do they?
Yeah.
Right. Let's move on now. Our next question is from Mary. Where's Mary?
Hi.
Mary.
Should we start to prosecute classists?
Oh, classists. Oh, this might be a word that people aren't familiar with, but there was an article this week by Alex Ben in The Independent, which was arguing that there should be a law banning classism. So if you imagine it's like...
I say classism.
Unbelievable.
And that was funny. That was funnier than he...
It was very funny.
They probably didn't get it because this audience is...
Now, this article is arguing that, of course, class, if you're posh, tends to be something that is ignored. When we're talking about discrimination, people often talk about transphobia, homophobia, sexism, etc. But class doesn't really get a look in. I mean, I think he's obviously got a point. The only downside is in The Independent, which is one of the most identitarian rags that currently exist, that is always pushing identity over class and money and economic inequality. So, but it's good to see that one of their writers, is sort of getting the memo.
It's frustrating because when they did the report last year into race, or 2 years ago, into racism in this country, when it came out, and they were basically arguing that a lot of it was down to monetary inequality, economic inequality, and everyone was sort of poo-pooing it and going, no, it's all because of systemic racism and stuff. The reality is, of course, your upbringing is going to have a massive impact on your future.
And how much money you have.
Of course it is.
And how many
and the
contacts
advantages you have and all of it. And that's this whole country, this whole world, this system is built on who you know and those advantages that you get and from an early age and continue for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
And I'm really grateful.
Yeah. I mean, Lewis, you mustn't understand this. I mean, if you have all those contacts, all that money that comes from wealth, all that privilege, all the confidence that you get from being raised in a wealthy family, you do have a massive advantage. That should be the focus, really. And if you focus on class inequality and economic inequality, then you're going to solve all these other issues of race, gender, sexuality, all the rest of it.
No. Because at the end of the day, there are a million reasons why people don't like me. And
it's not about you, Lewis.
It is about me because I'm thinking to myself, because what social class am I? Are people going to not like me because I'm well educated or I'm...
Americans don't have any class. Literally.
I would find it difficult to identify what class background you come from.
Yeah.
I think that would be quite hard. Is that deliberate?
In a way, because Americans don't have that class, so we're different.
Yeah. Everyone in America is quite rich, aren't they? Whenever I see TV shows, everyone's house is huge and,
They have more stuff, yes.
Yeah.
But the point is, like with me, I grew up having a very strong Brooklyn accent, which was...
Is that what you've got now?
Yes, basically, yeah. Even though I've been to speech therapy to get rid of it. And that's the God's honest truth, because it meant it had a negative connotation. But sometimes, just because someone has a posh affect, they could be judged negaturely.
So they could be, yes.
They could be, often they can. You're looking for a basketball player, let's say. You know what I mean? You're looking for
But I think, surely it is good. I mean, the left traditionally has always been about redressing economic inequality and looking out for working class people, and they've sort of dropped the ball on that since this identitarian movement started about 12 years ago. They really have just let it slip and often demonised the working class and sort of said they're the problem. They're all these sort of racists and homophobes waiting to commit a pogrom. And actually, it's quite refreshing to see a left-wing publication like The Independent finally address the issue that they've ignored for so long.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. I wish I had said that.
There we go. Anyway, we're going to move on now to a question from Neil. And where is Neil? There you are, Neil.
Hello. Should feminist student societies exclude transgender women?
So the University Student Union bosses have agreed. There's been this ruling that feminist student societies can have a single-sex space, and that means excluding those who identify as women but who are male. And this is Bristol Students' Union was criticised. They had disciplined the feminist group Women Talk Back and its president, Rachel Rosario Sanchez, who appeared on this programme to discuss that case. And I thought it was really interesting talking to her. And her point was, look, we are there, we're going to be discussing sexual assault, women who've been through trauma, rape, this kind of thing, and she wants it to be a single-sex space for women. And yet they were completely castigated for this. Now, I'm glad that this it's the right outcome.
Absolutely. And it's a sign of the wheel slowly turning, and it's also a sign of what it's taken, which is a bunch of grassroots organisations standing up for their rights and taking those things to court. And it's the court system in this country that has really saved us from the madness.
That's interesting, isn't it?
In terms of all of these different things, every time they have... The fact that they have to go to court is sick, is sad, and people are having to spend so much money, and this was all raised money, basically. Normal people, not the far right donating as they want to be sort of...
Well, they always say that.
Yeah, they say, but that's not what it's been at all. But every step of this, from Maya Fawcett onwards, those rights have been established through the UK court system.
But that's a worry, isn't it? I mean, I was talking to Helen Joyce about this, insofar as, yes, we've seen a lot of lawfare, is what they call it. I spoke also to Sarah Phillimore, who's a barrister, and I was discussing these ideas about, you know, can we rely on the courts? Can we rely on the judiciary to sort this out? There seems to be a general feeling that the courts are, to an extent, quite ideologically captured, but that the high courts are OK. So eventually, if you keep pushing...
Well, sanity will prevail, but the problem is the institutions then don't know about it. You know, so just like how the policing bill and the non-hate crimes and all that stuff might have been established in court that it was wrong or illegal, but then it didn't filter down to the grassroots.
We've just got time for one more question. I'm going to get this from Richard. Where is Richard? Hi, Richard.
I'm here, Andrew, and my dilemma is this. When my children were younger, I told them fairy stories, but if and when I have grandchildren, telling them the same fairy stories will be deemed inappropriate and beyond the pale.
Oh, absolutely they will be. Now, you might have heard of this storytelling app, which has rewritten lots of old fairy tales for a modern audience. This was by the actress Cara Toynton, I think is how you pronounce it. And it's different versions of Cinderella, where the heroine suggests the prince has proposed too quickly. You've got Sleeping Beauty, where the princess is not woken up with a kiss, and this kind of thing. And there was a survey that found that 40% of Generation Z think that these fables are inappropriate. But the thing is, Lewis, it's always been the case. Some of these old stories, if you read Grimm's fairy tales and that kind of thing, they're full of violence and all sorts of unpleasantness. And, you know, if you think about the story of Straul Peter, you know, the character with the shock-headed Peter, a lot of violence in those old children's stories, and kids like that.
Because they taught a lesson.
Yeah.
And they gave people hope. And the fact that they're rewriting it, they should rewrite it. Cinderella should be rewritten. The idea that someone goes from a scullery, whatever, she's a chambermaid or something.
Yeah, she's a maid. Yeah,
she's a maid. That she's going to find the true love of her life. No, she's not. She's going to go into a career and be single for the rest of her life and never have any children.
So your issue is about realism.
So I think they should rewrite it because no one wants to the women today have no hope. Have no hope. What's the other one about being kissed? The woman is in bed waiting to be kissed. And no guy's going to kiss her for the fear of being Me Too'd. So she's sitting there all alone. She should know she'll never get kissed again.
Is Lewis right, Josh? Should we just rewrite these stories and make them more realistic?
I just wish that Lewis was my father. Really, no, they're not realistic. And one of the stories, they've reversed it so that it's the frog is now the princess.
Yeah.
That's not going to work because guys will just snog anything.
For goodness sake. But I think there's a place for, I think there's an overprotectionist idea with children, this idea that kids can't handle this kind of stuff. I remember reading some very violent stories when I was a kid, and I really enjoyed them, and I learned a lesson. No, I did, and I really enjoyed it, and I learned how to socialise off the back of them. You know, like there was that story, there's a children's story about biting your nails, and there's a character with huge scissors who cuts off children's fingers if they bite their nails. And I didn't want to have my fingers chopped off, so I didn't bite my nails. You see how it works?
Yes.
Yeah.
He says hiding his hands. But yeah, like that's even things like Roald Dahl and whatnot.
Yeah.
I may not be a fan of the man, but the story's there. That's what kids are drawn to.
Yeah, they love it.
And they do. There are these themes that have been around now for thousands of years that have got humanity to this point. And of course, they're not meant to be read literally.
Yeah.
But there are lessons there to be learned. And who are we to come along and then mess them up or what? But then saying that, you know, texts have been reinterpreted through time and...
Yeah, but then if you sanitise these stories, I mean, the kids just won't enjoy them as much. I don't think.
No, that I 100% agree with. They want the bad stuff.
Yeah, of course.
It's not about enjoying. It's about you want to, with you, Andrew, you wanted to learn not to bite your nails.
Yes.
Maybe some point in the future, nail biting will be considered to be a great thing. I mean,
I doubt it.
They're cutting off their genitals, and that's considered a good thing. Maybe cutting off your nails is on a par.
I'll be honest, I would have never have predicted that there was the medicalisation of mostly gay kids, and that was seen as progressive. No one saw that coming.
No.
But biting your nails, I think we can all agree, is pretty gross and should never come back.
Do you know what? Maybe not.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, you're speaking to two Jews.
Yeah.
We do a lot of nail biting.
As a matter of fact, I think there's proof that people who bite their nails have a better immune system than people who don't.
Right. This is a stereotype I wasn't aware of.
Google that. You can Google that. I might be making it up.
You are making it up. But by all means, people can Google everything that Lewis says tonight, but most of it will be.
You're supposed to interrupt and say, which you haven't done, and say, we haven't verified that, but that's not been verified.
I think there's just a given. I think the audience understand that everything you say is nonsense, and that they shouldn't take it seriously. I think there's just that. No? I've upset him now. OK, well, after the break on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be asking why a statue of four-time Prime Minister William Gladstone has been removed from its place outside a church in Liverpool. See you in a few minutes.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like
Absolutely.
on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
and right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. William Gladstone was a prominent Liberal politician of the 19th century who served for 12 years as Prime Minister in 4 non-consecutive terms. Undoubtedly a significant figure in our history, but a statue of Gladstone has been removed from outside a church in Liverpool while its suitability is debated. The question has arisen because Gladstone's father owned slaves in the Caribbean, although his son strongly condemned the practice. Joining me to discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome the historian and political commentator David Oldroyd-Bolt. David, thanks for joining me today. This is a very peculiar one because when it comes to Gladstone, he couldn't have been more unequivocal in his condemnation of slavery, and yet here he is being effectively damned for the sins of his father.
Well, exactly. The sins of the father shouldn't be visited upon the sons, but when it comes to Black Lives Matter, it doesn't seem that that takes effect. What's happened here is typical of the Church of England at the moment. In 2020, Black Lives Matter was a big protest, and the Church of England got its knickers in a twist because he thought, oh my God, we've got this anti-slavery thing going on, and we've got so much money from slavery, so much property, etc. What do we do? So what they've done is seized upon one of the most inappropriate people they could possibly seize upon in Gladstone. The reason that the bust was there, which was funded in part with Heritage Lottery funding in 2013, was because Gladstone came from Seaforth in Liverpool. His father's house, Sir John Gladstone's house, was Seaforth Mansion. And at Our Lady, Star of the Sea, he worshipped there. So they thought, we'll put this bust outside. It couldn't possibly bring up any controversy, and of course it could. Gladstone's first speech, his maiden speech, as they call it, was defending the rights of West Indian slave owners. But that was the only speech, I think, that I know of in which he did so. He later came to condemn slavery intensely and without any sense that he thought that this was something that, times have changed. He just said it was terrible. Yes. As he called it, that consummation utterly to be desired, the utter elimination of slavery. And indeed, when he was president of the Board of Trade in 1844, he halved duties on sugar from non-slave using countries in order to try to persuade Brazil and Spain that they should abolish slavery. And this was directly against the interests of his own father. Sir John Gladstone wrote to the Times saying that this should not happen, and he and his son really did break apart on this.
So where is this coming from? Are there really all these activists clamouring for this bust to be removed?
No, of course not. This is a typical instance of the Church of England getting its knickers in a twist about a few people online who might have said something 3 years ago, and now refusing to put out an unequivocal statement and actually, having looked at the evidence, because this is about the evidence of what Gladstone did, not the perception of a few uninformed people, there is no reason that this statue, this bust, should not be on display.
And yet we keep having this argument about Gladstone. I mean, we had it with the Gladstone Gardens. In Liverpool, there was the one of the dormitories at the university, I believe, was renamed from Gladstone, but renamed after Dorothy Cuyer, who's a Marxist, who actually supported the Stalinist regime even after the forced labour camps were exposed. So someone who's actually pro-slavery.
Well, indeed. And are we going to, for instance, ban the Sydney and Beatrice Webb buildings or have them renamed at the London School of Economics? Because they were great supporters of Stalinism, even when they found out what was going on, and even after the show trials. So it does seem that there's a bit of moral one-dimensionism here, that it's fine if you're a hypocrite if you're on the left, but by no means could you be on the right. And let's make it clear, Gladstone was the Liberal Prime Minister. He began as a high Tory, but by the time he was in his 30s, he was moving towards the Liberal position and only ever governed as Prime Minister as a Liberal.
So then why is there this historical illiteracy going on? I mean, they've even had it, there was the bust of Thomas Henry Huxley, an abolitionist, and they were saying we should get rid of this because of something he said. The fact that he campaigned for the eradication of slavery doesn't seem to matter. You'd thought that would buy them some sort of kudos, right?
Well, I think one of the problems, it goes back to what the historian A.J.P. Taylor, the mid-century historian, said, that the past is what happened, history is what we tell ourselves. And what's happened over the past half-century is that there has been a revision of what we used to tell ourselves about the role of empire and our part in it, but not forgetting that empire is something, or empires have existed for the whole of human existence. They are a natural part, it seems, of the growth and evolution of societies.
And not explicitly British, exclusively British.
Well, no, every great society in the history of humankind has evolved this thing called empire. There is, it seems, deep in our psyche, an atavistic part of our psyche, is the need to dominate others and to take wealth and to take land and to take goods. Now, this is not something that we solely, as Brits, were responsible for. It happened long before us, the Roman Empire, for instance, and it will happen long after all these people are dead and the petty squabbles over statues have been forgotten. But I think for the time being it's very important that we don't allow what is a very small number of people who are listened to disproportionately to either their importance or their knowledge or the verisimilitude of what they say.
Is it about the way in which people interpret what these statues represent? I mean, I think for some activists, they see a statue of Cecil Rhodes, say, and they say this is a celebration of all of his worst opinions. Other people see it as a landmark, an artefact of history.
Well, most people have no idea what Cecil Rhodes stood for. They've allowed themselves to be persuaded by an ahistoric and often false narrative about Cecil Rhodes. He was I mean, as a young man, he had some views that we would not now find palatable, and he continued to hold some of these views throughout his life. But he also modified some of his views and believed, for instance, in the equality of the races in Africa and in India. He founded the Rhodes Scholarship, by which people of all colours, of all creeds, of all races, of all nationalities have benefited ever since he died. The idea that just because someone held once a rather unpalatable opinion should not disbar them from being regarded well in other areas. And I think this is one of the legacies of colonialism with which we have to deal. The Nigerian writer Chinua Achebe said the point about colonialism and our legacy with it is that it's complexity with contradictions. There is both good and bad. And the professor, or former professor of moral and pastoral theology at Oxford, Nigel Biggar, whose book Colonialism is published this week, has had this problem that his book would not be published. His original publisher, that is to say, would not publish it. He had to go elsewhere because people are so worried about anything that is seen as an apologia for colonialism. Well, it's not about apology. It's about giving straightforward, factual information about those bits that were good. For instance, I think that one of the great legacies of the British Empire was that in India we banned sutti, the practice of burning widows on their husbands' funeral pyres, and in Africa we tried to get rid of female genital mutilation long before anybody in the rest of the West was thinking about this. Equally, there are parts of it for which we should apologise, and I think have apologised for a very long time.
And it's interesting you mentioned Nigel Biggar's book. I know there is a dispute in terms of what happened with the publisher, which was Bloomsbury, and I know Bloomsbury deny or have a different version of events. Recollections may vary, I suppose, would be the phrase that you'd use. Nigel Biggar says that it's absolutely not the case, that there was a kind of backlash to the publication of this book. But isn't it quite an important corrective? I mean, whether you take issue with what he's written or not, but actually to have a book that talks about some of the more positive aspects of empire, at the moment, that's quite a bold thing to do, isn't it?
Well, I think just to have a book that isn't entirely condemnatory and against the facts. Trevor Phillips' review in today's Times, I think, is good on this because it discusses where the book shows empire to have been a force for evil and where it was a force for good. And Nigel Biggar's tried to bring in this ethical debate about empire for quite some time now. Indeed, his 2017 programme, Ethics and Empire, was condemned in a letter to the Times by academics before it had even got off the ground.
And that was a programme at Oxford University?
Yes, it was just an idea that we should think about this and we should try and think about it in the round, rather than condemning it automatically or indeed praising it automatically. Because that's not the way that debate happens. You don't just sit down and decide that for the next 50 years this is a good thing and this is a bad thing and you can have no discussion about it. That's the most intolerant, closed-minded, idiotic, frankly, sort of approach to any question of history.
But I suppose that the approach that the activists take is so emotive in terms of the language they choose, the imagery they opt for. They'll talk about how Winston Churchill was equivalent to Nazis or equivalent to Hitler because of his, what they say is his responsibility for the Bengal famine, for instance. I mean, but this is not a historically nuanced assessment.
That's just historically wrong. But this comes down to a point I've been trying to get across to people for a while. When activists, particularly online activists, start a discussion or start an argument in such bad faith, when they are coming from a position of straightforward untruth, stop giving them airtime. Ignore them. They're like toddlers who are running around screaming for more Smarties. Just say, no, sorry, no, we're not doing that. If someone comes forward and says, you know what, there were parts of the British Empire that were previously considered good that I think, because of X, Y and Z, new pieces of information, we ought to reconsider. Fine. Let's reconsider them. Let's have an honest, good faith discussion. But just to allow the agenda to be driven by people who only want to condemn the past, who only want to say that we were dreadful people and our forebears were dreadful people for taking any part in this whatsoever, neither enlightens humanity, nor does it lead to more open-minded debate, and nor does it lead to better literature. All it does is lead to people disliking our forebears, who did, I think, for the most part, go about their lives thinking that they were doing the very best they could.
I mean, is it the case that activists just like to select those sort of egregious moments, things like the Amritsar massacre, but of course that was condemned wholeheartedly
at the time. Yes, by the government and by most people in charge. The Amritsar massacre was it was an appalling event. And when you mentioned the Bengal famine, we were in the middle of the Second World War. This was 1943. Churchill did, having looked at the papers, and Andrew Roberts' book on Churchill makes this very clear, Churchill did as much as was absolutely practical at the time to make sure that these dreadful events were mitigated. We sent grain to India to try to do what we could. We couldn't send as much as we would have done in times of peace because we were fighting the Nazis and because we were fighting the Japanese Empire at this time as well. We didn't have the resources. Churchill bearing responsibility for the Bengal famine is one of the great historical lies. The weather is to blame, not Churchill, not Roosevelt, not Stalin, as much as we might like to blame Stalin rightfully for other things that he did to encourage famine. This was not one of them.
David Aldroyd-Bolt, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
And after the break on Free Speech Nation, I will be meeting the mother who has taken her son's school to court after she claims he was forced to take part in a pride parade. See you in just a few minutes.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Mother Izzy Montague has taken her son's school to court after claiming they forced her 4-year-old son to take part in an LGBT pride parade. She wrote to Heavers Farm Primary School in South Norwood, London, back in 2018, asking that her son be excused from attending because it went against the family's beliefs. The school refused, and Mrs Montague launched legal action, supported by the Christian Legal Centre, against the school on grounds of direct and indirect discrimination, victimisation and breach of statutory duty under the Education Act 1996 and the Human Rights Act 1998. And Izzy Montague is here to discuss this now. Welcome to the show. So, a lot of people will be surprised to hear that a 4-year-old would be expected to participate in an LGBT pride parade. That feels like a sort of adult activity that people choose to get involved with. What were the circumstances surrounding this?
So the school decided that they wanted to celebrate Pride Month. It was June, everyone else was doing it, all the other big companies. So the school said that, yeah, it's something that they wanted to do. It was advertised to the parents on a blog that it was about Stonewall, celebrating the gay federations and liberations of sexual freedom. And they feel like this would be something really good for the school to do, and it should end with a pride parade on the 29th of June.
And so you wrote to them and just said, well, you would like your son not to participate.
So I wasn't aware, I have to admit, I wasn't aware of a school blog at this stage. My son was 4, hadn't, really, this was quite new to me.
Yes.
I'm used to the old ways of doing things, a newsletter in a bag.
Yeah.
So I only became aware of this when I saw an article and a parent had complained about the things that had been going on that month with what their child had been doing in the classroom.
Yeah.
So I see this article, I'm quite shocked and amazed, and then that's when I get in contact with the school.
And what did they say to you?
They just said that, I said, he can't do a pride parade at the end of the month. We're Christian, he will not be able to celebrate this. I was told that it's an assembly, all children have to participate, and no children should be excused from any school assembly on whatever grounds.
But that's interesting because even the organisers of Pride would admit that it is a essentially political event. And so to try and get a 4-year-old involved with politics as though they've even had a chance to really think about these issues, that seems a bit strange.
It was very strange. We were knocked back with a lot of... basically, it's mandatory, these lessons. It's about celebration of diversity. So a way to kind of, get away from the fact that it was LGBT celebrations. It was more to do with the fact that, children are just proud. They renamed it. So it was to do with a pride parade, but then they later renamed it to be Proud to Be Me. And that was just another tactic to basically force children to do this.
It does feel like a lot of schools are sort of very obsessed at the moment with the notion of diversity, Black History Month, Gay History Month, LGBT History Month and this kind of thing. Would you be happy with having discussions about these ideas in school so long as the children weren't expected to participate in a celebratory way, not have a choice?
Correct. I think any type of social or social ideologies should definitely be discussed first with the parents. I have no problem with any parent not wanting to celebrate something that is quite close to our hearts. So if your child didn't want to march in an Easter parade, if a parent decided that, well, I don't want my child to do that, that has nothing to do with us. We will still participate. But I think it's important that children should be allowed to have an education first. Let's make that the most important thing. All these other social things should be choices, and it doesn't really need to take place.
Is your concern just what's going on at this particular school, or is it a broader problem with the schooling system generally?
Exactly. So I think what really made me stand up for this was because there wasn't anywhere to turn to. It was quite clear and quite obvious that schools can just act as authoritarian as they like, enforce things onto families without any question. And when you decide, I was shocked because I was like, this is not right. Somebody needs to stop this. I was calling everybody, and it's quite clear that schools are just allowed to ram raid this onto families, and this is what the extent that you have to go to. You have to go to court to stop schools from just doing as they please.
Do you think that a lot of parents are too nervous to say anything about this?
Correct. I do think that a lot of parents are scared of the backlash. This is quite a big thing. As soon as we said we didn't want our child to do it, it was, ram raided, bigoted, homophobic, all of these things for your Christian beliefs. The next minute, something that has never, meant that you've been homophobic before, and in no other area this is, that you're a homophobic just because you're Christian. But in this, particular situation in the schools, yeah.
And those accusations have come your way, have they?
Definitely. You know, the bigoted, and this isn't about me wanting anyone else to follow my beliefs. This is about my son going to school, getting an education, and just being able to have his own beliefs.
And before we finish, I just want to ask you, Izzy, about other parents. Have you had much support from other people? Do you get the sense that there are other parents within the school who share your concerns but maybe haven't spoken out?
Oh, definitely. At the beginning of this, I definitely wasn't alone. There was other parents who were as much forthright about this, but it's the backlash. It's really serious, and I do feel it for the other parents. I understand that, you know, if you're sending your child to a school that has such strong views, how will they treat your children? My child was in, you know, a 3-hour detention after this whole thing when I complained. So there's no doubt that people do feel that they will be, you know, victimised and also, so yeah, you know.
Very interesting. Well, Izzy Montague, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Heathers Farm Primary School did kindly send us a statement which read in part, as a school, we have a duty as stated by the Department for Education and reinforced by the Early Years Foundation Stage framework to promote fundamental British values. The teaching covered a range of curriculum-compliant topics, including celebrating diversity, challenging stereotypes, Black history, women's history, LGBT communities, the environment, mental health and disability awareness, among other things. After the break on Free Speech Nation, Richard Madeley uses the wrong pronoun, Matt Hancock makes an entrance, and a pet bird sings the Addams Family theme tune. It's almost time for Social Sensations. See you in just a few minutes.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the final part of Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. And before moving on, I regret to inform our viewers that Lewis Schaefer was right about something. A Google search has revealed that biting your nails can help people with allergies. I'd like to apologise sincerely to Lewis for doubting him. It is time for Social Sensations, though. This is the part of the show we dedicate to the weird and wonderful world of social media. So first up, we've got this. This is from TV presenter Richard Madeley. He's been in the spotlight for using incorrect pronouns when talking about Sam Smith. Let's have a look.
A shot of him, Sam, spanking and simulating a very specific act with a scantily clad drag queen.
Remember that Sam Smith uses the pronouns they.
They, yes, sorry.
I don't know what he's apologising for. Sam Smith is a bloke.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it.
Look, you know what? I'm just so... The non-binary thing is, I just can't get on board with it.
No.
At all. And I would, just out of politeness and in the days of be kind and all this stuff, but it's gone so far now. And also the fact that Sam Smith specifically is the reason why the Brits went into this sort of non-gender thing, and now women are losing out on their representation.
But that's the thing, like, I think I'm a liberal. I think anyone should be able to call themselves whatever they want. If he wants to call himself a plural, if he wants to say I'm a they, if he wants to say that I'm not male... he can do that, and I have no objection to that at all. But I'm not going to play along with it.
Well, that's it. It's
just
indulging it, and now I think that whole identity is just it's not if he wants, like you say, live and let live.
Well, I mean, Lewis identifies as Lewis Schaefer plus, so you are also. But I'm not going along with that either, Lewis. Frankly.
Well,
Ridiculous.
You know what? You should go along with it. There's more fun when you go along with it. If Sam wants to be. Whatever she wants to be. I think whatever.
You see, it's difficult, isn't it? It doesn't come naturally. This is the problem.
No, if he wants to be a he. If she wants to be a he.
Yes. If them wants to be a they. You see, it is different. It's not going to work, is it? So let's just not do it. Anyway, we're going to move on to this one. This is Matt Hancock. He was a regular in this segment in his I'm a Celebrity days, and he is back for more. So his bizarre pre-show entrance on Good Morning Britain reminded social media users of a certain sci-fi movie.
Hey, you're not supposed to be.
People are mocking Matt Hancock quite a lot. I feel a bit sorry for him, actually.
I don't feel sorry for him at all. No, because you know what? This week, that interview, he really got it, and I feel like he was like the whole thing of him being in the jungle was like Hancock watching.
Yeah.
And now it's like he's actually been held to account by people who know.
Yeah.
Rather than being with a bunch of celebrities who don't know anything, and I'm not including myself because I'm not a celebrity, but I don't know anything either. But the fact is now someone actually stood up to him and went, no, wait a minute, this was wrong, and he was found wanting.
Any final thoughts, Lewis? We've got to go.
Final thoughts is, I think we've learned that we're not allowed to call him a murderer.
Who?
Matt Hancock.
No, I never did, Lewis.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to either.
Well, good. Thank you for complying. All right, well, thanks a lot for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when Tom Jones was scorned by the rugby world. Nicola Sturgeon realised there are consequences to denying reality. Thanks to my panel as well, and do join us next week at the same time. See you then.
Hello, very good evening to you. We have something of a north-south split through tonight with some cloud and some rain across northern parts. Clearer skies further south, but that brings the risk of some frost and some fog. At the moment we have high pressure across the UK, hence why it's so settled, particularly for southern parts. But notice there is a weather front waiting out in the Atlantic, and this is going to push its way towards the UK as we go through Monday. Back to the here and now though.